Hey folks, thanks for tuning in for video 2 in our How to Design a Japanese Koi Fish Tattoo series. This video we are going to be probably fleshing in that gross design that we did, just our little super quick down and dirty mock-up, and putting a few more details in it, and then we'll be getting right to the line work. If that sounds interesting to you, I'm Clay, the techie tattooer, and it's time to get to the iPad because we've got some drawing to do, folks. Oh, by the way, we are going to be doing the finger waves today, but that is going to be a separate video. So when they just boop in magically, don't get mad. The part's not cut. It's just in the other video. All right, iPad. All right, folks, so here's where we left off with video 1. I've just got 2 layers, really, because this layer is just the fake leg, right, to make sure that we're designing it properly for the outside of a calf tattoo. And we've got our red layer, that's our fish, and our blue layer, that's our finger wave mock-ups, just placeholders really quick to kind of help support our design. And so we're gonna take those 2 layers and we're gonna drop the opacity way down because really, as I was thinking about this, you know, yes, there are absolutely things I can do to kind of flesh this in and get the, you know, the lines here and then, you know, these little fin lines and then, you know, there's a little extra gill line here and some more details we can do and making this all craggy and cool. But I'm not gonna go ahead and worry about that, right? You know, like a cool little eye thing here, making sure we've got the matching lump, because really you don't ever see this opposite eye. If you'll notice that when the head's turned around, right, this one doesn't even have the lump. Right, this one doesn't really have the lump, but he's got these, you know, you got the 1, 2, and then that little outer funny soft gill, right? And you've got, you know, this one doesn't have, he's only got 2, right? Because he doesn't have that little outer soft gill, but, you know, he's got this cool little angry eye socket, which I'll probably end up stealing because I love giving things angry eyes. So having the excuse to give it a little bit of that is always a good idea. Just make them angry. Yeah, the fun little whisker there, just getting that proportion right. And you can see even in real life, they've got this line here, right? They do, and then it's got this other line here. So we got to give them at least those 2 to make it look authentic. This one's done in black, so it's really hard to tell, but there's this line here, right? Actually, maybe I will get to that super bright, disgusting green really quick. There's this line here. And then there's that little funny fin that pokes out, right? And there's no line there, right? Or like here around the eye, right? But notice how kind of in this old school drawing, it doesn't really line up where like the eye to this one, to this fin, like really line up in the tattoo world. Like they line up here a little bit more, right? In reality as well. And so we're gonna wanna do that, right? Where we keep this aligned along this plane here. And it's not perfect, right? The eye is above the middle point of this piece, right? But they kind of nestle into each other like that, right? This one, right, they do that where that's something, you know, we just kind of take a little bit of creative freedom there where, yeah, the middle point's down here and the eye is a little bit above that, but really if you draw just like a nice curved line, it all just kind of seats in really well together. Same thing here where this guy's got his eye directly lined up into that piece there, and that is sort of what we want, right? Yeah, just things to note as we're designing and proportioning our tattoo. But I'm just gonna go ahead and go to the black and we're just gonna start making this guy happen. Oh, wait, I gotta add his little fin up top. Why do I always forget the fins up top? I'm not sure. So, I have a tendency to do that. And this is gonna go to here, right? His little middle line here. But then we know from reality, right, that their fin doesn't start for a ways back, right? This, you know, the old school Japanese drawing, the fin doesn't start till way back. It starts way further up close in tattoos though. Look at that, right? See that, where it's starting way up here? That's classic for tattoos, to start this up this high, right? So that's just something to consider as we're playing around with this design, that really our fin, yeah, we're gonna wanna have it coming out about here, maybe even here. Yeah, somewhere in here. Not as far, but not as high up as this guy's, right? Like up in here, but we're gonna split the difference right around there because I wanna have a little bit of a gap right here between the top fin and this fin to kind of add some separation there. And so what we'll do is I'll get to my red and kind of mock that in like something kind of like this, right? So it's got a nice swoop back, and then we bring the S around and it flips and then kind of does like one of these, right? Because if we look, right, that little last whoop, right, that's what we expect to see from that, right, is this last little whoopy thing, whatever that's called, right? And that's how that fin's gonna end, and that's how we're gonna do that, maybe even not quite so aggressive on the thing. We might even let it like kind of roll a little bit so it's not so spiky and forward facing. But that might not be tall enough. I might make it a little bit taller. Yeah, something like that, right? And so you'll notice how I'm choosing to have space in my design. Actually, this all can be, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna use it for my reference though later. So I'm not gonna erase that. I'm using the space. See how this fin pops out here and here, and there's space right here between it, but then there's also space between this one and this one. It's by no means like a balanced or the same space. It's just so that each individual element, right, the space here, right, so that all of these little pieces of the fish, none of them are laying on top of each other, and it's all just like really clear, plain. Every little piece of him has its own home to live in. And that's why this classic C-bend, it just works so well because it allows you to just get all these cool little individual elements just stamped out, and nothing sits on top of anything else, right? It's all just incredibly clear and easy to read. Readable tattoo designs, folks, it matters. All right, so now we're on our new empty layer. Go to the black, and I'm gonna go to my calligraphy pen monoline because even though it's not American traditional, notice how clean these lines are. They do have taper to them, but really this is just two basic line weights. He's got a larger neotrad line weight around the outside, and then notice how the, whatever those dealies are called, his whiskers and these inner lines are a smaller line weight. Right, I mean, it looks like this could be like an 11 or 14 round liner around the outside, and then some kind of like 9 round liner or something like that for in there. Could be a 7 depending on how fat they're going, right? But again, same kind of thing here. There's not a lot of line weight variance, right? They're just nice, heavy, yeah, just nice, clean lines in a tattoo like this. And I know that maybe depending on, what you think of when you think of, Japanese tattoos, do they have these like cool, like brushstroke lines? And yes, a lot of the ukiyo-e stuff does. But a lot of it really kind of doesn't, right? Like if you harken back to this thing and how clean it is, right? And how the line work is just nice and clean, So, boom, boom, talking way too much. Let's just go ahead and start fleshing this guy in. And we'll start with the body here. And like always, I draw through my designs. Ooh, recenter. And erase out the pieces that go behind other pieces. So I'm going to do his full body design here. Making sure to swoop this up into the center, right in that center of this head horn, bindi dot, not sure what to call that. This mark of wisdom. Hold down, scooch just a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna make this less swoopy even and make it more shallow. Yep, so that it comes along that, yeah, so that's a little bit more even and less, right, so that the gap in here doesn't get all like big and small. Again, it's not as dynamic a fish, and it's not as, you know me, I like the swoopy swoop. I like to make things all like dip-diddy-dip. And that's definitely not one of the things the koi fish is famous for, is all kinds of dippity-dip curves like I love to put in my shit. Okay, I like how that's going. We're gonna give him his nice, fat, flattish, round tail here. Boop. And we're gonna we're gonna go so basic. We're literally gonna continue this curve, right? Very much like how this one does, right? Where it just continues that curve. Boom, boom, like no problem. This one doesn't. This one does something, more like what I would normally classically do. But I'm gonna fight that urge right now. And just come straight out like that. Yep, so let's see, let's follow that curve a little bit better. And we're gonna come straight out. Yep, hold it to cheat and just tuck that guy in where it wants to go. Boom. Same thing with this one, but even more extreme, because this one's gonna have a fold on it. So this one's gonna come along like this, right? Cutting it not as wide as this one, because as we bring this in, boom, actually, are we gonna give this any texture at all? Yeah, I think I am. So before I give it texture, I'm going to draw in the lines, making sure they're nice and evenly spaced. And then again, because this is a tattoo, we're not gonna wanna put as many lines as you see in like this guy, right? Because those will all bleed together over time. And yes, that's a more realistic look to have all these little tiny lines in your fish, but this is where we kind of have to fudge things for the art of tattooing. And again, shallow little bumps here, nothing too big, nice and subtle. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, and then we're gonna bring that back that way. In between here so that this line isn't lining up with either of these lines, but that's my own neurotic thing. You do not have to follow. That's just how I choose to do it. Go a little bit further out. There we go. Yep, there we are. I like that more. Okay, so that's our koi tail. Now we're gonna get the head in here. Yep, exactly. And both of those are completely cut off. And so we're gonna do the same thing with ours, where we're gonna cut this off here. Boop. That nice little cutoff. And then this guy, I'm going to give him some fun little lumps. That's too penis-y. Because we want that to tuck right in along here with only the slightest outdent, just to bring it out barely from that design. And so this one I might even like flip it that way a little bit. No, that doesn't look right. Yeah, there we are. A little bit lower like that. I still feel like that might be a little bit far out. Yeah, I feel like that needs to tuck even closer. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this. Right, and so you just go to the little lasso rope tool, right? Go to your freehand, and I'm literally gonna cut this in half, and then just rotate it closer. All right, so we're gonna rotate it a little bit further in. Do a little bit of the warp. Yeah. We want that to be a little bit shallower, not so pointy, right? So shallower. Yep. Shallower, but further back. There we are. And the same thing here, where we're gonna bring this around and go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, but then this is gonna come right down into that. Yep. Bring this right along here. Give him that eye lump. Eye lump. And down into the funny mouth. He's gonna get an angry eye. And that's too big. There we go. You might get like a little line like this, just to kind of give him that more fishy kind of feel to it. We get another little subline here just for texture. Hold and move. And then this little face, I like to give them a little separation line here, right? We'll bring his whiskers off of that. This one's gonna tuck behind, and I'm actually gonna bring it back a little bit further than I had it there, because I think that looks good. Full on mustache. And then we'll have a little bit poke out from there. Boop, just ever so slightly. And then start our cute little sucker face mouth. And that's actually going the wrong direction. So this has to come further down like that. And then I think the sucker face actually wants to go under there. Yep, there we are, much better, much better. And boom, right, because that has to come from this line basically straight down to the center he's got there, right? And so that's kind of where we want to make sure that's roughly happening like that, right? So that head bisects that way, right? Notice how this one even has that line there in the skin break to show that that's how that's supposed to break down. This guy doesn't have the line, but that's what we want to see, right? Is that's where the middle of that lip fatness has just got to be right in the center there and kind of come from down there doing its little sucker fish almost looking thing. Get that out of the way. Actually, I mean, we could, some people do that, right? They'll absolutely put that line there, right? Like especially in that part of the head, right? To give it that cool separation look. We'll make it a little bit smaller. Right, we'll give him one of those. And then for that circle, right, I don't like to do like the full circle. I really like how they've got the lines there, right? This guy doesn't have one, but you know, kind of that American traditional style where you use like fur markers to kind of identify a border. And that's exactly what we're doing here, is basically little fur markers. But if you go and you do your research in Japanese koi fish, you'll see this is really common way to do this design, because it's trying to show that it doesn't have a hard edge, but it does have an edge, right? And so that's how we're gonna do our little center dot on our koi fish. Before I forget, because I will forget, we're going on a new layer, because none of this is like over or under yet. But now that I'm going to start drawing the fin on top, I've got to get my new layer going. Get this top fin correct, hold and cheat, scooch it into place. And there we go. All right, we'll get our other fins in. Just fun little like almost egg, almost guitar pick kind of shape, right? There's a million different ways to do this shape too, by the way. Like this is just how I do it. Whoops, there's so many different really cool ways. But you know, you wanna make sure they're roughly the same size. I like to put one of these in there. Actually, I really like how, so let's see, how does this guy do his? Yeah, he doesn't even have one, right? This guy doesn't even have one in the more classic Japanese. I like doing that kind of stuff, how he's got one. That's probably more of an American traditional treatment, because if you look, this guy doesn't have it either. So yeah, that's probably an American traditional thing where we like to add little swoopy swoops in, right? Where we go like boom, boom, check it out, right? Not the most Japanese traditional thing, but looks really good, because Japanese tattoos and American tattoos have been sharing and stealing from each other since as long as I've noticed, which is a kind of a fun, cool thing to see that happening. But then also what that does is that gives us a really easy line to then go with. We would technically want a smaller line weight, but I'm already at 0, yeah, for this guy, at 1. So I'm gonna go back over this idea and see if I want to add smaller line weights in between for the fins. Let me think about that before I absolutely commit myself, but I'll do it on another layer. Version control, right? And we'll see if that's what we end up wanting once we actually get there. Right, so that these two are roughly the same size, these two are roughly the same size, and this one's just off on its own, doing its own little silly thing. And then that's that, that's that. Now we do need to talk about like getting the scales in. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw up a grid. Right, you can see how shallow these really are, but they do standard like the fall, but they're really shallow oftentimes, right? They're not like this, right? They're like this. And so we're just gonna kind of wanna look at our design here and sort of break it up. So like the scales are relatively large, they get bigger as the koi fish design gets smaller because you don't wanna confuse the viewer. Yeah, but notice how the scales don't like get smaller. They just kind of flip around and then and so that's something you want to kind of watch out for, where this is definitely very akin to American traditional designs in the way it fakes perspective in that. Because really, as this was like coming around and disappearing down these would get smaller like prospectively, right? As it flipped around the fish, but they don't do that. They stay the same uniform size throughout. And so that's what we're gonna wanna do, is make sure that we're drawing nice uniform lines in it. And doing things like, notice how this is there's 3, right? 3. There's 2 here, but they're all kind of the same even spacing, right? It's gonna make it really, really easy to get those scales in. And then, yeah, I'll probably just end up drawing some, because they don't really curve around the body either. Exactly, they're nice and straight. And so I'm gonna just create some grid lines, like here, here. That's probably not shallow enough, because we want these to be relatively shallow as well. So like this is coming this way, right? So we're using the back of the head here to kind of inform how we want this stuff to go. So that should work roughly. Let's go back to our black layer. Yeah, we're gonna get a whole new layer up for the scales because I don't want to mess anything up. And it'll just make it so much easier to erase everything out. Yep, and then this line can't come all the way up there, so we'll just get rid of that now. If I can draw on the correct tool, we can get rid of this now. And I'm gonna make this scale far too big. And that doesn't make any factual sense, but we're just gonna use it like that for now. Nope, because that's just double wide and that's not gonna work. So then let's see. So then if this has to be single wide from here to here, then this is gonna be the single wide again, coming there and there. And then that means this is going to come out like this, like this. All right, there we are. So we got our scales in now. And yeah, I'm not gonna put that second line in there probably, just because we'll just do that with color when we get there, right? Notice that there's not the line, that's just a skin break line. And so we'll just remember to keep those skin breaks in when we get to the color of this design. That's pretty much it for the line work there, unless we're gonna go to, I mean, it's not because we have to put the lines in the fins, but I'm still in this weird like decide-sidey phase about how many lines do I put in? And I think I'm gonna go for fewer lines and kind of match this, right? And possibly even put, so let's see, we're gonna start from here. Yeah, that looks okay. I can see that, I can see that. It'll be somewhere in between those guys. So then that means we're gonna be going something like this, something like this, this, one up here to follow that. Looks pretty good. Right, and then that means what I'm gonna wanna do is go back to those fins. I guess I don't have anything on this layer, do I? Fine, do something with you in a minute. There we go. We're gonna go to these fins and we're gonna put, I guess we'll put divots in them, because I don't want them to really stick out too much farther than they are. So we'll go through, we'll put little dimples in these guys.
All black like a ninja, ain't wearing no tabbies, ain't sipping no sake. When we in the kitchen, ain't whipping hibachi, but all like wasabi. Sushi blunts, got my eyes looking Japanese. Blowing smoke like a dragon, I look Japanese. All black like a ninja, Ain't wearing no tabbies, ain't sipping no sake. When we in the kitchen, ain't whipping hibachi, but so like wasabi. Sushi breast got my eyes looking Japanese. Blowing smoke like a dragon, I look Japanese. Hit the blood so hard that I cough. With a stainless steel, a fork in a pot, just trying to get hard out of stove. Stretching it, whipping, it's hot in the kitchen. Shit, I'm trying to get back what I lost. Phone steady ringing, little bitch think I'm playing. Look, bitch, right now I ain't trying to...
We'll get rid of our referencey, sketchy stuff. You go to... Yep, that's it, folks. That is the line work for our Japanese koi fish style tattoo. Here's where we're going to be putting the finger waves in just a little bit. But yeah, this is where we will start our next tutorial, where the waves will be done, and then we'll be looking into color and how to make all that happen. Also, stay tuned for the next tutorial where we're going to get to waves at some point, even though that's technically separate. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think, because your feedback is invaluable. And thank you to whoever viewer. I'm so bad at remembering your guys' names, though. I remember you when I see you. Thank you for the suggestion. Japanese koi fish tattoo. Let's go for it. You guys are great. Keep sending me feedback. All right. Catch you guys next time.